So welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we have Officer McGregor back to tell us a little bit about his experience with juvenile probation. So Officer McGregor, how did you get into JPO?
So let's see. When I got out of college, so I got a degree in psychology. I got out of college. I went into banking. I was like one of those guys behind a desk, like open accounts. You come in, talk about your problems, open accounts or whatever. I did that for a few years and tried to move up in the bank, but it wasn't that easy. So I kind of felt like I was stuck. One of my friends, he was an adult probation officer in Pittsburgh. So, talking to him one day, was having lunch, and he was telling me about his job, and I was like, well, that sounds kind of cool. I always had a kind of an interest in law enforcement, but I also had a real interest in like helping people. So it felt like a good balance from what he was telling me. Being able to help people overcome their issues, and plus still being on a law enforcement side where you're holding people accountable. So I went and I applied, and they were like, "Dude, you have no experience in this." I was like, "True." So I got hired at a juvenile reform school as a drug and alcohol counselor, which I didn't have any experience as a drug and alcohol counselor, but they did a lot of on-the-job training. So I quit my job at the bank, and I went to go do that as a drug and alcohol counselor. We're at this juvenile facility, where this facility is, these kids are adjudicated delinquent, and they're court ordered to be in this facility and to go through the treatment. So I did that for about 3.5 years. And then once I had that experience, then I started applying for juvenile probation officer jobs, because we dealt with a lot of juvenile probation officers, because those are our clients that are being referred to us for treatment. So I was like, well, I could do what they do. So I started applying for places, and I interviewed in the state of Delaware for their probation. And then I also interviewed in south of Pittsburgh at a county there, and the county south of Pittsburgh reached back and hired me.
So when you applied for the job, did they have you do any type of training before you started, or was it all on the job training too for juvenile probation?
All right, so once you get hired in the county I worked in, once you get hired, you start right away, and you work with your supervisor, and they give you a caseload right away, and your supervisor kind of walks you through what to do, how to manage a caseload. And then they send you to a lot of, they do a lot of trainings in-house before you can actually meet with the juveniles on your own. So everything I did with my supervisor. I couldn't actually meet with a juvenile and work a case by myself until you go through defensive tactics. Handcuffing, OC. We had OC spray. We didn't have to actually get sprayed with it, which is the funny part. We just had to learn how to actually use it and how to actually spray it. But we'd actually get sprayed with it. Baton. We had a collapsible baton. Had to learn how to do the strikes with it and takedowns with it.
Have you ever had to strike a juvenile?
Well, my baton, no. I had some stories where I've had to use force, but I've never actually had to strike a juvenile with a baton. I use it more for like knocking on doors, honestly.
Okay.
I had a situation where I felt like I needed to pull the baton out. Also, with the office I worked in, they did carry firearms. It was optional. It wasn't mandatory. And I'll be honest, most of the juvenile officers I worked with in the department, I think maybe only like 3 or 4 out of like 30 or 40 officers carried firearms.
For somebody who's in college and they want to just get out of college and be a juvenile probation officer, what kinds of classes do you recommend for them to take?
Do an internship while you're still in college, because I've seen some people get hired after doing an internship with the department, the county I worked in. We had people that were college students that did an internship, and then after they graduated, they got hired. So it was rare, but it did happen, because they kind of see you already have that experience. You kind of already get to really see what a job was. And sometimes they had issues with finding qualified people.
So do you have tips on how to find those internships?
I mean, if you go to the county's website or go to the department's website, they usually have some kind of tab with instructions on how to apply for an internship.
So how soon would you say they should apply? Like in their junior year of college or?
Yeah, I'd say probably your junior year. Yeah, junior year.
Okay. So tell me tell me how many people that you would supervise as a juvenile probation officer on any given time.
Juvenile, our numbers were low, and it was low intentionally. I think I couldn't have more than maybe like 25. And that's because we actually saw the juveniles a lot, and there was a lot of work we had to do with them. So when they're in the community, I mean, we had to see them, I think, at least twice a month. We'll do school visits where we go see them at school. We'll go to their home, meet with them and meet their parents, meet with any service providers, any counselors or therapists that they're meeting with. Meet with principals, meet with their teachers, see how their grades are. School behavior was a really big thing because you can get violated for school behavior. That, if you get expelled, suspended, that's a violation. We take it back in from the judge, and the judges, depending on how frequently it is or what exactly you did to be suspended or expelled, they can violate your probation and send you to a juvenile placement, like one of the places like the reform school that I worked at.
Oh, dang. And then you also have to go to court with them, right?
Yeah, we would have to go, by law, we had to go to court I want to say it was every 6 months. So there was a lot of court. But see, the judges, they like to have a lot of hands-on with the juveniles. So they'll bring them back every maybe 2 months or every 3 months because they wanted to see them more frequently. So there was a lot of court.
What would you say would be the most difficult part about being a juvenile probation officer?
They give those kids a lot of chances. I mean, it would be, I'd be like, this kid needs to go to a placement. He needs some treatment. He needs to go away. And the judge was like, no, I'm going to give him another chance. Or, I'll just put him on house arrest and see how he does with that. So it'd be frustrating. And working with the parents is stressful too. I mean, I think that's the worst part. A lot of times you see why the kid is messed up to begin with, and it's the family.
They're just like a product of their environment, right?
Yep. Exactly. I mean, I had parents that knew what I wanted to do, what I was recommending was the right thing, but they would fight it because that's their kid, that's their baby. They think they could fix them. I had this one kid. He was little. I think he was only 15, but he was a little guy. I mean, he probably weighed less than 100 pounds, if that. And he was into opiates really bad. And he was like, in his addiction, I mean, he lied, and lying to him came so easily. You would have thought he was an addict for years. And I tested him, and he was positive for a bunch of different things, but he denied it. I didn't do anything. I sent it off to the lab. Lab work came back. He had high levels of opiates in his system. And for him being so little and weighing so little, it was like, it could have killed him, how high his levels were. So I arrested him, took him to I took him to detention center, the juvenile detention center. I told the parents I want to send him to a treatment program. And they hired a private attorney. And when I say they fought me to send this kid to treatment. They felt that they could handle it themselves. They can get him outpatient treatment. They didn't think that he needed to go. And I mean, when I was on the stand, the private defense attorney, he was grilling. They would have thought it was a murder case the way he was grilling me. He would have thought that I did something wrong. But I mean, that's his job. His job is to, do what his client wants.
Right.
But my job is to do what's in his best interests.
Now that you've done both adult and juvenile, which one do you say you, I guess, like the best?
I want to say I like adult better. I like the fact that you kind of go through all the training up front. Um, it's just a different system. You know, with bail and bond, they didn't have that back in juvenile. I mean, if we arrested somebody, they sat there till the judge let them out. You know, um, having to deal with bond and bail, that stuff is a little, still kind of confusing to me. And it's frustrating because it's like, you put all this work in, you make the arrest, and then a third party, the magistrate, gets to decide whether your arrest was warranted or not, or how much of a value they place on your arrest. You know what I mean? So that's a little frustrating, but I mean, it is what it is. But I do like adult better because there are real consequences. People have real time over their heads. So we have more authority and more things we can do.
And as far as the salary, is it comparable for both, or is one better than the other?
I mean, it's hard to say because, like I said, I was up in Pennsylvania when I was a juvenile officer. I'm here down south in another state now as an adult officer, and I mean, I'm getting paid a little bit more here, but I mean, depending on where you work, depends on what your salary is.
Lastly, I want to ask you some tips that you would have for new juvenile probation officers. What is like your best tips, best advice?
Get to know the family dynamics. Get into the house, see the house. When you get into the house and you see, the house is nasty. There's not much food. You see how, the siblings and the parents, how they interact. You get a real good sense of what's going on in that kid's life. Now, granted, I had some kids that, grew up in, big houses, good families, good paying, the parents had good jobs, and they were still messing up, making bad decisions, getting in trouble. But those were more rare. It's usually there's a lot of underlying issues that really leads a juvenile to getting in trouble. Second thing is you gotta be patient. You gotta be patient and realize that change takes time. You're not there to be their friend, but be a support for them. But they should also know that you have an authority over them. And a lot of these kids don't like authority, so that's very hard too. So it's a very fine line to have that professional relationship where it's like, hey, listen, I'm here to help you, but realize if you mess up, I'm going to arrest you and take you to the detention center. Because in the end, our goal is community protection. I can't have you going around breaking into people's cars, stealing cars, using drugs, carrying guns, bringing guns to school. You'd be surprised.
Okay, I think that's it. What do you think? You want to add more? You got more?
I got a couple stories. I got two stories. Let me tell you two stories, two juvenile stories.
Okay.
All right. So